Okay.
It's as real as it gets, babe.
Welcome to the Boy Girl Mom and Dad podcast. I'm Lauren,
And I'm Nick.
and this is episode 44, Finding Myself Postpartum.
Boy, girl, mom and dad here for the good times and the bad. From gender norms and stereotypes to making sure that the butts are wet. Boy, girl, mom and dad want grown-up time, you're going mad. It's a trip, but we'll guide you through with tips and tricks for boys and girls too.
Wow. Can you explain how you got lost?
You know, I think I'm a little bit lost in that story as well. This is episode 2 of the Dear Mama series that we started for the month of May-ish. We'll probably extend a bit just in honor of Mother's Day. And honestly, this was a draft that I had that I thought would be a good idea, but it was not supposed to be episode 2 of this series. Episode 2 and 3 that were originally scheduled had to be dropped, and we'll have them come another time, but the interviews had to be canceled. So you've got us, not fun guests, but Nick will probably say we're fun. Nick will probably say we're fun, but
I don't just say it, I believe it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't bring guests on because they're fun. I mean, some of the guests are fun, but we bring them on because they're way smarter than us.
I also think they're fun.
They are fun.
Can you imagine talking with or interviewing a dud? Are you trying to be a dud right now?
No, that was a pretty quick joke. Good job.
I'm fast. It's funny that you asked me about the finding myself postpartum and how I got lost, because I was thinking about what to title this, and I almost said, should it be finding yourself postpartum? Because that's really what it is about. But also, I like to write things in how I would search for on the internet for them, or how you might search on the internet. So if you're wondering how to find yourself postpartum, or maybe you're the friend or partner of somebody who's postpartum who's kind of lost themselves, then this episode is a great listen. Or if you just want to learn about it, it's a wild time for sure. And also, before we get into it, I just want to say I'm going to refer to postpartum as any time after you've had a baby. I know clinically they say 6 weeks, I think, is postpartum or something like that. But I think once postpartum, always postpartum, because you're irrevocably changed.
I mean, technically, that's absolutely correct.
Yeah. I just think back to that person who commented on that Instagram post of mine a year ago. Or maybe it was a year ago-ish. Where I said finally a bikini, I feel good in postpartum, and they were like, isn't that 6 weeks? I'm like, hey.
What a thing to say on a post where you're saying you feel proud of yourself.
Not even I feel proud of myself, is that I felt good in my body in a bikini.
Same, you get what I'm saying.
It's not the same thing.
No, I know, but it's still a weird thing to say on a post that's about
It's a weird thing to say. Yeah. But as you know, what do we start with before we get into more details on today's episode?
Tiffany.
Tiffany.
Yeah, Tiffany the Tiff.
Tiffany the Tiff. Okay. Maybe if we go to Tiffany & Co., that's cool with me.
I have one, but I know you've written one down, so I mean.
Yeah, this is a good one. You can do the next one.
That's what you said last time. So, yep. We've got about 80% yours at this time.
You were not prepared last time. Write it down, put it in your pocket. We'll do it the next one, okay? Cool.
I have it in my pocket. Maybe we do 2 today.
Maybe not. I was thinking about this the other day, and it's not even a is it right or wrong type of thing. It's just kind of a fun question. So Nick already even asked you this the other day, so it's not your first take on it, but do you have a comfort song or a comfort show? Or I would say, do you have comfort music you listen to over and over again? Or is there a show you watch over and over again to give comfort when you need to fill the silence, or you just want to feel good? I say that because for me, I have comfort music that I return to when I want to go back to a nostalgic time, or just songs that make me feel happy and good. Whereas you, Nick, not to give your answer, but you have comfort shows that you will watch over and over again. And for me, I don't really ever rewatch a show. There's so, you know how many shows there are out there these days? I know there's a ton of music too, but it's different when something's like maybe 3 minutes, maybe 7 minutes at the longest, versus like, I guess like there's 30-minute shows out there. But for me, I would rather listen to music I know and love. Not that I'm against new music or new artists, but I'm never going to be like, oh, let me cruise the PCH on a new music Friday playlist. That's Nick. But I also, I'm like, why would I watch new shows? So I don't know. I'm taking too much of this, Tiff. You can have it now.
Do you need me for this, Tiff?
Yeah,
You
it's
just said all of my answers and
I
possibilities.
didn't say what your
at
favorite
once.
shows were.
Yes, you did. You said everything.
Go ahead. Well,
I don't even remember the question. It's been minutes.
do you have a comfort show? Do you have comfort shows or comfort songs? Because you would rather listen to new music you've never heard.
You're answering for me again.
Hold on. You would rather listen to new music you've never heard, and you'd rather watch old shows you've rewatched before. You are open to new shows too, so I guess that's kind of invalid. Maybe it's like the dog and cat thing. Like cat people are always dog people, but dog people are never cat people. Maybe show people are always music people too. I don't know. Please have a say.
Okay. It's my turn to speak now. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
If we're talking about like old shows or music, I'm probably going to pick shows. But I don't know that I like the question structure because I have old music and old shows that I love.
That's very true.
So I don't know.
They're music from your favorite shows.
That's not true.
So is it different? It is true.
I have to answer. I have to answer.
Okay.
So my favorite show is Scrubs. It's an old
What?
show at this point. I know, shocker for you.
Wait, I just have to say something. We are driving somewhere in Los Angeles. I can't even tell you where we are. It's like near dusk, so you can see like lights on that are in apartment buildings and stuff. There's a high rise. Nick goes, look, they're watching Scrubs. And one of the ones like a little bit above eye level from the car. And I'm like, you're right, they are. I can see that, but I don't know that I would have like radars like spot it.
Yeah, the funny part is it wasn't any scene with the main characters. I just knew the scene because I've seen it so much. So sure enough, after I said that to you, it showed up like JD was on the screen. Shout out.
How many times have you watched Scrubs now?
Enough.
Do you want me to say it? I was asking you, giving you a softball. I think it's probably like 20 times all the way through, and not the last season because it doesn't count.
We might be north of that. Yeah, just north. Yeah. Okay, so I guess my answer is both. So I love old music or music that can be considered old now that we're, the old generation born in the 1900s.
I have a caveat though. It's not necessarily like old music. It's just music that isn't like new music Friday music. Like music you're already familiar with.
That's what I just said.
I just mean you're familiar with it. It could technically be like
Mumford & Sons.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. We're millennials. We're born in the 1900s. That's a joke about us being old. But my old music is that. That's the band I was about to bring up.
Got it. Okay.
So I have old comfort music that's not just undiscovered. I like listening to undiscovered music or like music I haven't discovered, rather. That's probably a pretty good distinction because I'm no, new music person. But like
R&D.
Yeah. So like I would equally like to listen to music that's like nostalgic, that I know is great, to use your analogy, driving down the PCH. And playing a New Music Friday playlist that might be hit or miss. So maybe I'm weird in that. But I think that's also similar to what I do with shows. Because I'll give most shows that are recommended like a full season. But I also have my shows like Scrubs that I'll just kill repeatedly.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess I don't understand the question because I don't agree with your premise that you can either be one or the other, both old or new, or show or music.
It's just a typical preference. Just because I noticed that like you like to jam to new music, whereas I would rather put on things that I've listened to a lot of time and like feel good, like can like for sure sing it down the highway. Whereas I would prefer to watch a new show, and I don't know that I've ever really rewatched shows except with you.
Okay, so let me pose you a question.
Okay.
Okay, so how many times have you listened to a Mac Miller album or Mumford and Sons with me compared to how many times you've heard me play a New Music Friday playlist?
Maybe just a little bit more.
I would say a good number more, but more is the answer. So it's interesting to me that you're saying I'm a new music person when that's really not even a normal pattern for me, let alone the last few months.
I think more so I'm just leaning on myself, is that never will I ever typically go, let me put on the new music playlist. I say, how do I want to feel / how am I feeling now? And how would I like to feel once I listen to the music?
Yeah.
And that's going to be always something that I know, or an artist I'm familiar with. I'm not against new.
Just so you know, there are mood-based playlists on Spotify and Apple Music that play new and old musics that match those moods.
Yeah, skip.
Skip? Do you not want to listen to new music at all? You just shared a new song today from somebody we like.
No, okay, I'm done with this topic. The whole point is that I think people typically have a bent, and there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's cool. I'm just saying what I typically like and what you typically like. That's all.
And you're
turning into a Tiff that I am going to get frustrated about. Yeah.
Okay.
That's all. And there's nothing wrong with that.
I got a new song I want to show you later. Just kidding.
Cool. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear the new song. But maybe not while I'm just driving down the PCH. Or Candy. Whatever.
Okay. Are they screaming or having fun? That's a fun scream.
That's a hilarious question. Our friend Casey is watching this ones right now, and that's like a funny question of like, I feel like it's good in regard to parenthood in general. Are they screaming or are they having fun? Sometimes the answer is just yes.
Yeah. Also, Casey, Lauren's mentioned her before. She wrote and recorded our awesome intro song.
Yeah.
Thanks, Casey.
So the whole reason I wanted to make this episode is because I see things online and it's about motherhood and it doesn't make me feel good. It makes me either roll my eyes or be like, that's not real, or just completely not relate to it. And it can be like a slew of different things, whether like, whenever I was just postpartum, immediately postpartum, in those first 6 weeks and first several months, it was hard for me to see people who just like, quote, bounced back, unquote, because I did not do that. I carried 2 whole babies in there that how heavy were they? 7, right? Both around like about 15 pounds of baby plus placenta and all that. Anyway, correct. So it makes sense that like I didn't bounce back, but never in my life had I ever experienced anything but that. And so it was really hard for me to see that. And so, you go in and mute things, but like, I also just don't like women postpartum being preyed on by quick fixes and things like that in regard to their bodies. But I also, on the flip side, didn't want to hear or see people tell me, your body is just proof of the miracle that you created, because yeah, that's true and all, but that's not helping me feel good in my body and in myself. And I fully believe and support that statement while also not liking hearing it in regard to me feeling uncomfortable in my own skin. So and this could like affect multiple things, not just like the physical body. I see things about like, you don't need to find yourself after you give birth. Like, you're a completely different person. And guess what? I believe that. My sister has always told me, like, once you give birth, you're giving birth to a new self too. You're a new person. You can't go back to what you were. And I guess for me, I was never trying to like find my old self postpartum, or right now, rather, even with 2.5-year-old twins. I was trying to find a way to get anything done or do anything and have any semblance of being a person because I feel like so many things happen to where like I couldn't even feel like a human at times. And so I was just trying to find like the bare minimum. And a lot of the posts that I see about like, you were made for this and all that, I'm like, but that doesn't mean you're supposed to suffer. It kind of felt like it promoted like the martyrdom of motherhood, which I don't think is healthy. And science, I think, would say that too. And so this whole episode, I think, is just to talk about it, to make you feel like you're not alone. That's our whole idea here of Boy Girl Mom, is that you're only alone when you want to be. when you want to be shut in a room, like reading a book or sleeping or doing something in complete and utter silence. So,
Or listening to old music or watching
or
an old
listening to
show.
old music or watching a new or old show. Yeah, exactly, Nick. Spot on. But anyway, as we get into this, Nick's going to ask me some questions and I'm going to ask him some questions, just like the postpartum period and into the now. But we also have a couple other episodes I wanted to mention before we get into it that kind of deal with this postpartum realm. And that is episode 8, What I Wish I Would Have Known Postpartum, and episode 17, My Regrets in Pregnancy and Postpartum. So those are really good episodes too, if I do say so myself, and I'll link them in the show notes for you. Without further ado, here's the meat, and Nick is Arby's. He's got it. Let's go. He's got the meats.
All right, great. Well, my first question I have to you. If you are postpartum and you hear like a song that sounds old, but it's actually new, like, do you like that song? Do you hate it because it's new? Where do you stand on new
All
old
bets are off.
music?
All bets are off, and I'll probably cry.
Okay. Sorry. I was just thinking like all the old music you like was once new at one time. So it's like, have you always hated new music? But I don't know. I don't understand. Okay. When postpartum did you start to feel like yourself?
I love and hate this question at the same time because it's like an ongoing process. I forget what the science says, and I've looked up the data, but I think a lot of people are like, "Oh, you should start feeling like yourself," at 6 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever those random numbers people just made up. Really, those are just made up. Obviously, if you're post-op, that's one thing, but the 6 week mark is just like an arbitrary number. Anyway, that's a topic for a different day. But I don't know that I started feeling like myself. I think we talked about it before, and I said around 18 months is when I was like, oh, I'm kind of like coming into myself. I think there are a lot of things going on for me personally that first year. My sister got married when the twins were 6 months old ish, so that was a lot of stuff to be doing, and like caring for is the right word, because I wanted to care for them, caring for newborn twins. And so, I wasn't even cleared to work out until 6 months postpartum. And so I would say 18 months. And then really, I feel like just now at 2.5 that I'm just now like getting into my groove. I'm like, okay, obviously we're dealing with like sleep regressions and like big feelings and learning and boundaries and all that. But I still feel like I'm just now kind of feeling like not my old self, obviously, but like, okay, I can do this. It's hard to explain, but does that make sense at all?
Yes. So you're saying like basically 2.5 years old. So 2-ish years down the road.
I would say physically I started feeling like myself around 18 months old, and then like mentally I'm kind of like just coming into that as of lately.
That's interesting because in my mind, based on my perception of you, which obviously isn't correct, you're the one that knows you, seems like those two are flipped. So it seems like you were still pretty upset about the physical and how you were feeling physically around 18 months. And you were starting to mentally like settle into things like, I can't get as much done as I used to. This is like a huge part of my life now, like that kind of stuff.
I hear what you're saying, but I think so much of the physical took up how I felt. And, having twins, it does take longer to like recover like your body and everything, your hormones, just because you have double. So they had that going for me. But then I think that I was in so much physical pain, whether it be like knots in my stomach, or I'm healing from ulcerative colitis, and so like I was dealing with a lot of bloating and stuff like that. And a C-section exacerbates bloating, uh, and just learning how to breathe differently and like engage my pelvic floor and things like that in different ways. It was like I could only focus on that, and it was affecting me mentally. And so whenever I was able to kind of clear up the physical, I could like, okay, let me work on my mental.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. What percentage would you say you feel like yourself right now? Like, are you saying you're like back to 100% you feel like you physically and mentally? Or do you have some like threshold of, okay, I feel like myself because I'm like 90% back, if that makes sense?
I think it's the first word that came to mind was wiggle worm. I think it's a delicate dance of like I'm obviously not like I was, but I'm able to like realize things, and I think just come to accept more of like the things that I can't get done, and then prioritize the things that do make me feel better, and honestly just having to be okay with working on a what's on fire operation um, mentality.
You're a fireman. You're a firewoman.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Is that a redhead joke?
Wasn't supposed to be. Now everybody's going to think it is. So what made that feeling click? Like, is that you're looking back and you're figuring out, okay, this is when I probably started to feel like myself? Or was it like you woke up and it was like somebody hit you with a 2x4 and you're like, oh, I'm me again?
I think it was a gradual thing. It was definitely not like an overnight success story, but I do think I felt like a click of like, okay, wait, what? And maybe that's because, like if I picture like an outline of a body and it's like filling up like 20%, 40%, 80%, and then 100%. And I don't know that I'm at 100%, but I feel like I'm pretty close. And it like wasn't until it got to like the 80% or above mark where I was like, oh, it's actually happening. Like I am, maybe I will turn this surviving into thriving. But I do think it was like little steps that I took every single day of like one thing I'll definitely attribute it to is, I think it was 2023, the start of that year. So the twins were born in October of 21. My sister got married in 2022, and we kind of like, we did a lot that year. Your sister got married. And so we had a lot on our books, and mentally, again, I don't think I really came out of a newborn fog until 6 months when I was cleared to work out. But then I didn't really work out regularly because I felt like I couldn't. I felt like it was a burden to leave them with you, and that I needed to be there. And you really pushed me like, no, you need to take this time for yourself. It helps you physically, obviously, but it really does help you mentally. And so I think the first step I did was, making moving my body a priority. Pilates studio I go to, and it felt like a lot at the time, but I was like, I can commit to 2 days. It wasn't like a let's hit it hard and do like 5 days and make it impossible to do, just because that's not sustainable. Or maybe it is for you, but with newborn twins and stuff, it wasn't sustainable, especially because we trade off in the morning. So you'll typically go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then I go Tuesday, Thursday, and I'm totally good with that. I think that was really the first step in the direction, because I was able to clear my head and really take time for myself. So I say that was the first thing, but then just continuing to do it is probably how it started to click for me. But again, not overnight, and don't believe anything that tells you on Instagram or whatnot that it is an overnight success story.
I like that you said success story, because that compares feeling like yourself to success, which I would say it is successful. It's kind of nice. Did you know that you did that?
Thank you. Helped me. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. But I mean, like, did you know that you said that? Because I didn't phrase the question that way. You said it wasn't an overnight success story when you were talking about feeling like yourself. So that means in your mind, you feel like it's a successful, happy thing to feel like yourself again.
Yeah.
Sounds obvious, but it's just like, that's good.
Yeah.
Also, you said surviving versus thriving. Just a reminder that people that would see you while you think you're surviving probably see you thriving.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. Funny. We don't have to use this, but I'm pretty sure people you look up to would say they're surviving when you're complimenting something you're seeing about them.
So. Yeah, honestly, I'm not going to sing it, but it just comes to mind the Don't Cry Out Loud song.
Don't cry out loud.
There you go. Yeah, I'm very impressed.
You know what? I don't know that song because it wasn't on a new playlist. I've never actually heard it.
Oh my gosh. Never going to live this down. And you know the song because I sing it all the time. So there.
Okay, so was there anything else? You kind of mentioned working out, but you can say that again. Are there any other things that made you, like, helped you to make you feel like yourself again?
trying to think. I know my doctor, my OBGYN, Dr. Mercy, has said from the very beginning, like, take an hour each day and just do something for yourself that's not, this doesn't include grocery shopping. I guess it could if you wanted to, if that brings you joy. But like that's not working out and it's not grocery shopping, just and it honestly it could be as simple as just like sitting down and doing nothing. If that's what you want to do, cool. Because I think for me, sometimes I come out of a day with the twins or a situation where I'm completely drained coming out of it, even if nip even if Nick taps in and it's like, hey, I'm going to take over from here, or maybe it's like a nap time, or maybe I'm passing them off to our nanny. Like when I come out of it, sometimes I'm like, I can't do anything right now. I am so deregulated that I just need to sit, and I have to be okay with just sitting. And I have a problem with needing to be productive all the time and like not wanting to waste time. But I've learned that sometimes you just have to stop and do nothing, because otherwise your body will tell you when that time will be, and you'll oftentimes not feel good, and you can't even watch TV when you're doing that. So go ahead and take a break. Breaks are good, and they're required by the government and any other job. So yeah.
Yeah, I think the message you're sending is listen to your government. No? That was fun.
No comment.
Okay, so I know you've said the postpartum period is really long, but just looking back at the time you've already had postpartum, would you go back and change anything?
I've already said on the podcast that I would not go back to work. I had a client right when the twins were born, and so I probably wouldn't have gone back to work as quickly. I wish I wouldn't have done that. I wish that I would have moved my body sooner. Maybe at the 6-month mark, maybe it was like once a week that I could commit to at that time. I wish I would have done that, because I think that really was a starting point for me. Maybe I would do, I wish I would have done like postpartum, like massage, like getting those massages that by people who are specialized in that. I did do physical therapy, so that counts as something, and they did do some massage, whether it was on my scar or on my stomach to like rub out the knots. But I wish I would have probably done more of that, because that would have made me feel better. I'm very pro like doing what makes me feel better, because I feel like your physical health bleeds into everything else. If you don't feel well, then it's really hard to be a good partner, a good friend, a good parent. And so like putting my physical health at the top, at the tip top. There are some things that I would have done, like mental health. I probably would have set better boundaries and figure that out more. But I think some of it I wouldn't have known until going through with them. But yeah, I think that's it.
What do you mean by do something that makes you feel better? Because you said feel, which makes me think emotion.
And then physical. I'm talking about physical. Like massages, working out. I kind of listed the examples. Right now I really like to do like full LED beds, or cryotherapy or sauna, things like that. I love acupuncture. I do that every 3 or 4 weeks. Cupping, those types of things that are like wellness that I think can help you feel like every day. Maybe I just have a lot of elements, but I feel like I have felt like more worse days than good days, but that could be because I have scoliosis and, I'm healing from ulcerative colitis and things like that. So I guess it could be that related, but I just know like how crippling physical pain can be. And I know like mental pain can be like that for some people too, but for me, I think my physical pain bled into like me mentally and a lot of other areas.
So you're saying go full Michelle Obama and let's get moving. No, I hear you. You're saying physical, like health and wellness.
The other thing that I wish I would have done better is my physical therapy exercises. I think I got prescribed too many.
You did.
So it was overwhelming to me, and I was like, I can't do one, I can't do anything. I don't know. I wish I would have been prescribed less, but I also wish I would have done more exercises. I just felt like I was drowning in them, and that would have helped me too.
So you're saying not only focus on health and wellness, but start focusing on it as soon as you can, is what I'm hearing.
Mm-hmm.
So you would have done that earlier and more often.
Yeah, just because like after birth, like your hormones are going crazy, and if you're choosing to nurse, breastfeed, pump, whatever, your hormones are kind of like in. If you took a blood test, it would look like your hormones were in menopause. And so like there's a bunch of like wacky things and drops and surges and night sweats and things like that that just make it hard on top of raising a new human.
I don't know how this makes sense in my head, but I just thought of surge pricing. Like as your hormones are surging, is there some cost that's higher, in your life? I don't know. Bad Uber joke.
No, I like it.
Yeah. You kind of talked about these before. The way that question is phrased is asking you where you think you could have done better, which kind of inherently suggests where you think you didn't do so well. So flip that question on its head. When you look back postpartum to your postpartum period up to now, what are you very happy that you did when you did it?
I don't know, have you as a partner? I really don't know, like looking back, like what I did good, but
That's very sweet.
I also just don't remember a lot of the time.
Are you crying? I did not make you cry. I did not mean to make you cry. I guess I did make you cry. I didn't mean to make you cry.
I don't know what I did well. I feel like I was doing a lot of different things and not doing any of them well. But yeah.
I'm sorry. I really wasn't trying to make you sad. It's is interesting that you feel that way because from my perception, I know there are things that you want to tweak and would love to do better, have done better rather, to use the right past participle. From my perspective, I don't really think you screwed up at all. Like we have amazing, wonderful babies that have, I told them this morning, unrelated to this podcast or its notes, that they have the best mom, So I'll find your trophy.
I'm still waiting on my like most beautiful and best wife trophy, so maybe they're all together.
Interesting that you just took my best mom in the world compliment and asked where your trophy was. Interesting response.
So let me just give a background of like Nick tells me that all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder where your trophy is. So I didn't just like demand trophies.
Gotta be, yeah. No, it's gotta be really exhausting to hear that you're the best at things all the time from your husband. If I haven't said it before, I'm deeply sorry about that.
I think the reason why it makes me emotional is I look back and feel like I wish I would have like drank them in more and just like took them in. But it's like what I learned with having them in the first place is like I didn't realize how fleeting the time was, and people tell you that, but like you don't realize it until you realize it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's also why I feel not, I've said it before, again, I know you don't like it when I say that, but as far as like being a twin mom, I love it, but there are things that I actually feel like kind of robbed is a really strong word, but like having another child, I'd be like, I know what to do this time, and it was just like, oh, I'm like at this point, I did it already, and like I don't get to reuse the knowledge that I learned, which maybe that's why I like talking about stuff, is because I can pass on things that I learned to other people, even if I'm not going to use it.
I don't know how to say this without making you sound selfish, and I promise that I'm not. So let me finish, okay?
Okay.
All right. I think what you just said is valid, but it's stuff that you want for you. And that's not wrong, but I think that you want more time with them because you didn't have much time with them. And to your point, you weren't soaking them in.
Or I didn't feel like I was.
Yeah. Didn't feel like you were, exactly. So what I'm saying is, again, not trying to make you sound selfish, I think those are things that you wanted for you, but I don't think there's basically anything that the twins didn't get, even fun things, from you that they could have got from another mom. So like looking back postpartum, if we're thinking through their lens, I don't know much you should change at all. But I understand looking back and like tweaking what you would have wanted to change for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I guess there's not very many things in life where you can't like try it. I mean, we could try it again, but there's not very many things that you can't like try again or do over with the stuff that you've learned. Uh, and like birth, I guess, is one of those things where I don't know. You see where I'm going with this?
I do. I think my point still stands though, that it's like I'm separating like their health and their ability to be like great developing kids based on the direct support from you. I'm separating that from the things you're looking back and wishing were different. You know, like for example, it's different than you looking back and saying like, oh, I only saw them once a week because I was like choosing to do all this other stuff and putting it over them. Like that wasn't your vice. You know, you were trying the whole time.
Yeah, and I guess I don't think I was being a bad mom, but I don't know if I was being the best mom. And maybe it's the perfectionist in me. I'm like, I want to be the best and I want to give 100% my best. But also, I guess if you look at it, I wasn't the best, like physically and mentally. And to your point, the major things that I would go back and change, like, were not in my court to change. And so I guess I did it. Gold star for me.
Yeah. I think I would be surprised if we could ask Cypress and Olive right now and they would give like full, succinct answers. If I asked them, like, what could mom have done better? I don't think they would come to a quick answer, if an answer at all. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So sorry you don't have a trophy in your hand, but I want you to feel like you should.
Wait, so I have some questions for you. Thank you. Sorry, I should acknowledge. Thank you, Nick. I have some questions for you.
Uh-oh.
When did I look like to you like I was back to myself, whether it be not physically? You told me.
What are you setting me up for right now? Sorry, go ahead.
You told me I have never been more beautiful.
Correct.
One thing that I'm seriously still searching for is that postpartum glow. My skin, when you are nursing, if you choose to do that, your hormones aren't acting. And so basically you have this clear, or I did have this like clear, beautiful glow. And I still want that, but I've been having some issues balancing my hormones. And something that I've found that has really helped me is an LED mask. You may or may not have heard, but LED is not necessarily new technology, but it's kind of all the rage right now. And I 100% am behind it. I have the Omnilux Clear mask that helps with acne, but they also have a contour mask that's more focused on just fine lines and aging. And guess what? I have a discount code for you. It's actually a link and a code. I'm going to put it in the show notes, but it gets you 10% off your order. I have the full mask, but if you want to start small, they also have a blemish corrector or a mini, which I was on a good roll. Wow. But if you want to start small, they also have a mini version that you can target maybe problem areas and go from there and just invest in the bigger one if you decide that you like it. But I love it. Nick sees me use it. I literally have been using it every single night for the past 2 months, and I am not stopping. It goes everywhere with me. The mini is great for traveling, but I honestly also travel with my full mask because it's so lightweight. Did you want to say something, Nick?
It's like a daily Halloween costume.
A daily Halloween costume. Actually, one time I had it on and one of our children awoke and came into the bathroom when I was wearing it, and I thought I was going to scare them, but it didn't. It kind of looks like a fun Power Ranger. The one I use uses a mixture of red and blue light, which is better for like acne and skin health in regard to that. But if you're just focusing on fine lines and wrinkles, the red light of the contour is perfect for you. Again, I have a discount code for you and a link, and it's in the show notes. Check it out and let me know if you like it.
Go do it.
It's not a physical question. I meant like in how I acted physically, not how my body looks. But when did it seem like to you, if at all, that I was back or like mentally there postpartum?
That's a way weirder question if we're encompassing everything before postpartum.
I'm just being specific.
Yeah. I think a defining point for me was like, you got maybe this matched back to your Michelle Obama moment. When we fell into the pattern of like splitting up workouts in the morning and we actually still had that time to do so, I think that was the first time that you like let yourself get back into physical movement. And I definitely started seeing like real quick positive returns on that for you. That's probably one of the bigger moments.
Yeah.
Which I know is kind of stealing your point, but looking back from my perspective, that's probably honestly where. I think Also, when we started to get some really great childcare, or like fall into a pattern with family members who we could depend on to watch the kids and not be worried about them. Uh, like when we started to be able to do stuff for us again, and I don't just mean you and me on dates, which those are great. I'm saying also like you being able to go to a book club or going to meet up with some girlfriends or like any of that kind of stuff. I think realizing that you would be able to do that after the little like immediate postpartum cave you were in of not knowing that, which I felt some of that too. I think that's probably another indicator of like, okay, we're the light's at the end of the tunnel a bit.
Yeah, there's definitely a trust there. And we got our nanny when the twins were about 3 months old. I guess she started like March 1st. They were born October 13th. So yeah, no, that's a good point too.
Yeah. But I mean, there are still times where like you don't seem like you, and they're very minimal now. But I think there are still like little tiny pitfalls or like tiny black holes that you can fall into that are usually driven by kid stress. No offense, Cypress and Olive. That I see you fall into. But I think I also have those. So I don't think those are weird. And they're definitely few and far between now, but you know, they're still there, to your point about not being 100%.
What would you go back and tell yourself to better equip yourself or prepare yourself for living with somebody postpartum or supporting someone postpartum? So let's say someone's listening to this who their partner just had a baby and they're like, how do I support them best? What would you have done differently, if anything differently?
That's such a hard question. I think the first thing that comes to mind is like pursuing being an equal partner is not enough right away postpartum. So like you should, I don't want to suggest that women who are postpartum are not physically or mentally able to do anything, but I think if you're the partner and you are with somebody who has just gone through childbirth, you should assume like I'm doing everything that I can, and like whatever they're able to do, great, but you should be doing all of it that you're able to do. You know what I mean? So like, for example, right now, you and I aim to distribute things amongst each other. And we're not so specific that it's like 50% of effort here, 50% of effort here, but it's just like we have trade-offs. And I feel like we're both pursuing being like, 100% equal partners. If I were pursuing that same like level of effort right postpartum for you, a lot of things would fall through the cracks. And not because you're any less than when you were before, but just that would mean I wasn't stepping up as much as I should in that kind of a moment. Does that make sense?
It does, but do you feel like you weren't stepping up like that postpartum for me?
I think I did a lot. I could probably have done more. I'm not looking back and thinking about that because I think I failed in it, but I didn't have that mindset.
Mm.
Like I think I don't know how to describe it. I'm really not trying to draw these comparisons between women who just gave birth and people in crazy accidents, but run with me. If somebody like was in a coma or like got in a terrible car accident and was laid up at the hospital, like you as the partner of that person would assume you're doing all of the things. You're keeping the household running like because they need to focus on their recovery and themselves. And I think that is not our immediate bent as partners of people who have just given birth. We kind of have to like figure that out through things falling. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and so I hear you talking about things physically. Are there things that you understand now that would have helped you back then, like mentally, like to where we could have avoided fights or tiffs? It's okay if the answer is no. I'm just wondering.
No, I mean, there's a lot of things. I think there's a lot of things both of us could have done to avoid things like
Hey,
that. Postpartum.
I am the person who just gave birth to your twins, and you're going to say there's things I could have done differently.
Yep. Um, What about for me?
Well, because that was something that you would have gone back and told yourself, but would you have done anything differently? It's also okay if the answer is no.
I don't understand what you just said. Can you repeat it?
So you said things that you would have equipped yourself with. Would you have changed anything you did or done something differently?
I think I could have tried to understand early like baby milestones a little bit better, because I think like you've talked about mental load a little bit. I think it took me a long time to understand what that even means. And even though I was not intentionally allowing the burden of like getting our babies and household ready for whatever their next stages were, um, you were feeling that burden. So I think that's probably a way that I wasn't supporting you well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like in the research of kid stuff.
Yeah. And I don't just mean like I should have known it. I mean, like, I could have ordered the bottle things we needed or like checked through our registry, while you were recovering and like figured out the gaps in what the registry was to go get those things. Like I could have understood, okay, when should I have these bottle parts ready kind of thing, like to me, that connects with the doing all the things. So it's not just like, am I doing the dishes because there's not two people to do them in the house now. There's just one. Like, am I doing all the dishes or making sure the place is clean enough to live while you're recovering? But also, am I doing those things and preparing the house and us for whatever the babies need, to my ability, to my best ability.
Yeah. I think it's sometimes hard when one person is the one researching and like reading the books and doing all that. Cause I know this happens sometimes with us, but I know a lot in other people's experiences. Sometimes the other parent is somewhat, I don't want to say against the research that they found, but kind of like operate under like, well, it's obviously working what I'm doing. Like, why do I need to do something else? Or why do I need to read this book? Or why do I need to do what you say about that? And so I feel like that is an area that a lot of people experience some difficulty in.
That may be true, but that's not really what I'm talking about.
Oh,
I'm not talking about fighting against each other's parenting styles. I'm saying like, I quite literally didn't know the things that we needed at home for the babies to be ready.
oh, I thought you were also talking about like the research and stuff that I did.
No, that's part of it. That's how I would know what the babies would need. But I'm not saying I should have done some research and understood things so that you and I could discuss and fight it and figure it out. Like, that's not what I mean. I mean, like, it would have been easier on you in your postpartum recovery if I was getting things ready for the babies that I knew they would need, because you were doing a lot of that even while you were recovering.
I guess I was more so thinking of there are some times where we kind of like butted heads about like I researched something and this is what I thought to do, and you're like, well, why? Essentially, I'm like, I told you, and I said read the book, and this is why. But then it didn't. You're like, but this is working that you were doing, and so there was somewhat tension there. Sometimes I feel like.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm just saying that's different from what I said.
I thought you just said that was part of it.
I think what you're talking about is parenting styles and differences in opinion of how to parent.
No, well, go ahead.
Okay, so for example, there are things that you had to order and or have ready at our house within the first month of the babies being there that I did not know about. And I'm happy we had those things. They enabled us to take care of our kids. Enough blankets, fitting things for the sheets on their mattresses, like enough burp rags around, like the ordering the diapers, like things like that. You were doing a lot of those things, those tactical things in the first few months. And it's not that I was electing not to do them. I simply wasn't aware they needed to be done. So what I'm saying is, to your question of what I could have done better, I could have known that those things needed to be done so that I could step in and do them. Because I don't think it's an effort problem for me at the beginning, which speaks to your response to me a little bit. Like, I think I was trying my best to take on everything I could while you were recovering, but it wasn't enough because I didn't know the full scope of the things that needed to happen to help take care of these new humans that were in our house. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I think you're hearing me say the different part just because I feel like that's probably where I personally felt it more. Obviously, we got in discussions about, like, especially pre-babies coming. I had done a lot of research, and I had put stuff in a spreadsheet, and, like, I'd asked to look at it with you, and I know, like, we had something there where I was like, I've done all this research. Can you please just like look at it and tell me what you think? It's basically all like the legwork is done. And so, but also to that point, like I had the time to do it. I don't know. I hear what you're saying. I think what I'm trying to say is like, I hear you and thank you, but you did do a lot. And I don't remember it as something I'd be like, man, I wish you would have done that differently. That's all.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, looking back, that is something that it seemed like you did get frustrated with me for, just not knowing that there was more that I could do. Not like being upset with the volume of things I was doing. That's not what I'm trying to communicate. Just like the specific things that needed to be done. Not only did I not know they needed to for the babies, but you had to explain it to me.
Yeah, which is a lot of what like I think mental load in general is like a lot of moms will say like, why am I even in general, not just about like things babies need, like why am I going to sit here and explain it to you because it is faster if I just do it here, which isn't. I understand the sentiment, but it's also not good in the long run because it breeds resentment and things like that in a relationship.
Yeah.
You said something that you wish you would have done like differently. um is there anything you feel like you did wrong that you wish you could do over? It's okay if the answer is no, and I don't have something on like my head, the tip of my tongue or anything, but I didn't know if you felt something you would have done like actually differently versus something you didn't do.
I mean, so we're talking about the entire postpartum time up to today?
Yeah.
I think I would have made it clear to the people who were willing to help that we needed help sooner and more directly.
That which also like coordinates with what we said before of like on advice for other people. We have like etiquette for newborns and things like that. Of just like we wish we would have accepted help sooner.
Yeah, and I mean that's definitely a big part, but I mean like
Oh,
we have no, you're not wrong and it 100% applies. I'm just taking it one step back. It's not that I don't think we weren't accepting it. Like that's partially true, but we weren't asking. We weren't asking. Like we weren't going to we have best friends in the area that at the drop of a hat would help us. And they had to essentially force us to let them come help for the first few times.
yeah.
And I'm not saying that they did anything wrong in that by any means. Just like we did not allow ourselves to need help.
I think part of that is like you kind of already said, like getting people I could trust, not that people I couldn't trust, but that I had to feel comfortable with it. And I think that maybe that could be as like, I don't know, postpartum anxiety ish,
Sure.
as far as like letting other people do things. But I also have a problem of like feeling like a burden to other people. So I think for me, that was something too. But yeah, good point.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So we recently have discovered the beauty of having people come hang out with the kids and us stay in the room and do other things, or even hang out with all of them with an extra pair of hands. So given that, as an example, we've recently started to have our nanny come over and like a few hours before bed on one night, and we'll still hang out with all of them, but we'll also get to hang out with each other or maybe cook a meal or something that we get to enjoy while the nanny's putting them to bed. So given that we have found that we love that, looking back, Lauren, is that something with a nanny, with a family person or family member, with a friend that you would have been more open to just having people come like hang and help in general?
I think within reason, as far as nanny, yes, I think people, you kind of get to know people's styles and if they're willing to help or basically not necessarily not willing but unavailable. um I think it's hard. You definitely have to see like who can follow your wishes with your children and things like that. And so yes, I really love afternoon help, which I didn't really realize that I did as far as like working. But I think it also at the time, like we were doing what we thought was good, and we recently had an opening to be able to have afternoons, and I was like, yeah, let's try it. But now I'm like, please don't ever not give us these afternoon hours because I am a morning worker person. That sounded really silly. I feel like I get like good writing and things done in the morning, but the morning can be so chaotic that I'm oftentimes like, okay, we're not having any morning meltdowns. We're not like, we're fed, we've gone to the bathroom, all these types of things for the afternoon. It's almost a little bit easier. So definitely play around with timing and what works for you on that.
Okay. I'm going to be more specific. I think you're close to what I'm talking about. So we have a best friend. Let's call him Frank. Okay. One of my best friends lives by us. We're going to call him Frank. Frankie, the best friend. Okay. If Frankie, the best friend, got a call from me and I said, hey man, we're hanging out with the twins. We got a bunch of other crap to do. Can you just like come hang with us? Even though our house was dirty, dishes needed to be done, whatever. No specific ask of him, just come be there. I would do that a lot more. And I don't just mean with that one person. I mean with all of our friends that were or were not offering to help, just friends that we knew loved us. I would have done that more. I think there's a ton of like, I'll just speak for myself. I wasn't super comfortable having people over, even though I knew I wanted it because it wasn't clean. There was baby stuff everywhere. The babies were screaming and crying. I felt guilty about forcing them to listen to that. You know, I didn't have much actionable updates about work and about my life because the whole thing had shifted to taking care of these new humans. So I felt a lot of that too, which I know you, Lauren, have communicated to me. You felt that. What I'm saying is I would have ignored most of that and just had them come over. Because like, how many times have we said that having somebody else to talk to would have been a huge help to us? And also, if those people are in the house, most of our friends are people that do things when they see a need. So like, we wouldn't have had, like, if we got past that a little uncomfortability piece of them just being here, we could have had so much more realized benefit and beautiful moments with them around.
I think for me, I agree. I hear what you're saying and I agree with it. I think for me in the beginning stages, I was still figuring out what I needed to do. So I wasn't at the capacity to tell you what I needed to be done. Other than like, we've given the tip of like, have a note and say like what the kids' schedule is on it, like what they're eating, sleeping, blah, blah, blah. Maybe have some of your favorite foods or what people could bring you. And so like, I really didn't know what people could do to help me other than like give me food, which people did do and it was helpful. But I just didn't, I don't know. I was still figuring it out for myself. Um, yeah, it wasn't for me more so about like what was clean and what was not clean. It was just like I'm barely functioning and I want to take a nap, so I don't feel like talking.
Yeah. And I think that's one more step than what I'm saying, because I'm not saying giving them a direct list of things to do. What I'm saying is simply making the call or text saying, hey, we need you to come hang out.
I
I'm
don't
not
think
talking about
I
just watching
needed
the
that.
kids.
Sure.
Okay.
I think for me, was not overstimulated. I don't look back and think I was really overstimulated, but like in the down times, I needed to take a nap type thing. I didn't feel like I had the energy to talk to people for an extended period of time, but I can understand how that would have been good for you early on. For me, I don't think I needed that early on.
Okay. So you're saying you agree that you would have accepted more help earlier, but not if it came with the burden of having to entertain people.
Yeah, and I know it's those people coming over don't expect to be entertained, but like, so I'm not worrying about food and all that, even though I do think about that. But it's more so about like, I don't know, the my laundry list of tasks to do, and so it is tired. Like I'm usually tired from running around with toddlers all day, and then like having conversation. I'm more of an introvert, and so I don't know. I enjoy it all, and I don't regret it. But it isn't, I think, as life giving to me as it is to you.
Okay. Well, I understand your position. It's okay that it's different than me. I would still change that for us because I think the
Yeah.
benefit of it being them actually helping, not just being there to talk to, I mean, like actually helping us, um, would have borne a lot of fruit for both of us.
To your point, like I feel like that this time in general, even with toddlers, can feel super isolating because we only have one nap a day right now, but even so, like, bedtime is at 7. And so if we have friends who are like meeting up, we can't really meet up then. So like, I feel like it is a good thing to like just have people over because it does keep you connected.
That is what I was saying. Yes. Yep.
Cool. Great. Check. What advice would you give other dads or those supporting women who have just given birth or are in the postpartum period? What advice would you give them like to better support them or equip them, the people who's given birth?
I think a big one is take less offense than you usually do. That's probably a good piece of advice for everybody always. But there were a lot of things that I misread from you that were more about your frustration with your current spot in life than they were about me. And I think I took them as about me. So for example, like you've been frustrated before, specifically early on in the postpartum period where like I heard you telling me you needed something and my responses were, uh, I'm doing all these things. Like, what are you talking about? I'm trying my best, you know?
Hmm.
And while I do think that you could have delivered those messages much more kindly than you did, I don't blame you for that. Um, but I could have taken less offense to it than I did.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's something I would love to be like unoffendable. I would love to work towards to being that. Just I
Yeah.
feel like it would make things a lot easier in general as a human.
Yeah. Also, like, I do not agree with a hormonal state or a postpartum state gives you a free pass to be a mean person. And I'm not saying, Lauren, that you were this way by any means. I'm saying in general, there's a lot of stuff you see and funny videos you see about like, oh, I get to be this way because I'm in this part of life. Well, I disagree with that. Like, my assumption is that, Lauren, you never were trying to be mean to me and you were never using your postpartum period as an excuse to be able to be mean to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there were times where I felt like you were, and in those times I think too frequently chose the what the heck response instead of like I'm going to go do whatever is needed to be done or like just not respond. You know,
Yeah.
I fed into those a little bit. I'm not saying you were baiting me by any means, just like I bit back, even though sometimes that's against my nature when I like that didn't help the situation at all.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying about the excuse thing? It's not
Yeah.
you, but
I think the people who are doing that oftentimes have resentment in other areas of their relationship. And uh, as people say, a baby doesn't fix things, but it will show you where you already have issues. And I think that resentment may build when the baby's born, if it's not already there, like with lack of help or lack of effort. And so that often I've seen it used as a free pass in that instance where they're already frustrated and then they feel like they get to be that way. And I don't think I was ever that way with you or intentionally malicious and things like that. So no, I get it.
no. I don't think you've ever been intentionally that way. I would be very upset if I thought that you were.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking about the next thing that I was going to say is that just as like something, a tip for somebody supporting postpartum in general, or just moms in general, or the caretaker in general, um, pushing them to take time for themselves because they often feel like they can't or they shouldn't. And so that was Nick who like pushed me to take time for myself to move my body, not because of the way I did or did not look, but because of the benefit that comes with that mentally and physically, and the science behind that too.
There's a second part of why I was doing that to you. And in fact, a more primary part.
Okay.
You were so consistently telling me that your body was a source of frustration for you. My response to you to go do things had nothing to do with the way that you looked or the way that I perceived you, and everything to do with I was trying to listen to you tell me what your biggest problem was.
Yeah.
And your biggest problem in my mind was you communicating that you didn't feel like yourself physically, you didn't recognize your own body, and you didn't feel healthy.
Yeah. Well, I ended up getting another bout of ulcerative colitis in there too, I think from stress and other things going on. But to your point, yes, 100%. But go ahead. Do you want something else?
No, I'm just like saying it wasn't at all because of what I wanted you to do.
Correct. No, you were just helping me. I'm saying like create a space where they can, and sometimes they need a little bit of a push to do that. Something that Nick gave me for Christmas this past year that we talked about on our year anniversary episode, I think it was episode 40, was that he gave me like self-care Saturday. So the first Saturday of every month, I'm supposed to go and take some time to myself, whether that be going to get my nails done or a blowout or a massage or something like that, and just go take the time for myself. And he's with the kids, and so I don't have to worry about getting like a babysitter. Not that dad isn't the babysitter, but just like he's taking on and owning the tasks that day. I'm not usually gone a full day, but it is an option for me.
You're behind.
I am behind.
At least 1 month.
I am behind a month.
There's a punishment. The punishment is more days.
more days. But anyway, that was just a good way to, push me to take the time for myself because again, that's something that physically doing for myself that affects my mental health too in a good way, and I can come back and be a better mom. So, yeah.
I think to build on what you said before, you said the whole 1 hour thing, like a day, which is a great quote and a great piece of advice. But I think a more succinct way to give the advice you're already trying to give is like allow yourself to focus on you when you need to, you know?
Yeah, but I think it's really hard, especially as a mom.
I don't think it's easy at all. Never claimed that it was. I'm just saying you seem to be telling the other future moms that it is okay and actually vital that they do take care of themselves physically, mentally, emotionally, along with taking care of the new human or humans.
Yeah. Yeah. So, some other episodes that we've done that I think if you like this one, you might enjoy. Obviously, the two postpartum ones I mentioned at the beginning, but we have episode 25 is a supermom myth. One of my favorites, honestly. Episode 29 is the productivity problem, where I kind of already mentioned that I have a problem of always needing to get things done, which isn't the healthiest mindset. Episode 21 and 22 are the weight of invisible work, part one and part two. And then, yeah, obviously, honestly, all of them are good, but those are some specific ones that you might be interested in.
What would you have wanted me to do differently to support you better in your postpartum period?
How I would have wanted you to help me better in the postpartum period, I think, I mean, as humans, we have this, but me specifically, I have a desire to be understood. And so I think I wish I was a little bit handled with more care about like my feelings on certain things, just coming out of a major surgery and giving birth. Um, that like I felt like I wasn't necessarily the tip top of mind and like taking other people's thoughts and feelings into consideration, and I didn't feel like the most important. Um, or like that I had gone through anything at all. And but then I also know like we were both operating on little sleep, and it is such like a life change for both of us. So I know it's not just me, but I feel like I was dealing with that on top of like the physical pain. Like I was still taking painkillers um, for a couple weeks afterward, just because of some complications. Uh, and so I think I just wish I would have been a little bit more understood, but that's also assuming that I wasn't doing anything that you didn't need to be understood and things like that. Yeah. I mean that's what I was like I was wondering if you were going to say anything like that when I asked if you would have done something differently, and you kind of said it, but I kind of just wanted to feel more like taken care of isn't the right word. I think like I don't know. I think we were dealing with a lot, both of us, and it kind of like bled into the new things that were happening.
I hear what you're saying, and I don't understand the answer to my question.
Okay.
So, like, for example, I don't think it is a fair expectation for the husband to be able to understand. Like, if we rewound, I think I could do a million things better and still not fully understand where you were coming from. So, I don't think that's
I think I would maybe more say it as like handled a little bit with more care in my emotional and mental state. Like, yeah, the surgery was over and it went well, but that I was still like dealing with things, even though like I looked and appeared fine.
and you feel like I didn't treat you that way. I'm not
Um,
trying to be nitpicky. I'm just not hearing the here's what you could have done differently. Do you see what I'm saying?
not gotten in a fight, like understood. I think that we got into fights about, like visitation and things like that. Uh, that like those are the things that I look back and wish were different.
And in your mind, if I understood you better, those wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
For example, if you asked me that question, I would tell you something like, try and give me more grace when you are feeling like you have to explain something to me. Like that's a tactical thing. Well, I'm not saying consider me over somebody else. Because if you asked me right now, it would be an obvious yes that I should consider you over everybody else. So I think your answer doesn't make sense to me because it carries with it the assumption that I wasn't doing that and that I was trying to appease other people more than you. I know that you've communicated you sometimes have felt that way, but I'm not trying to argue. What I'm trying to do is get an actual do this differently, and I still don't know what it is. Also, like saying that you should have been more right to me isn't, I don't know how that's an attainable
I think
thing.
you weighted what I was saying at the even amount of like what you were saying and what your wishes were, and it was like my body, like I was the one bleeding out, like it was like I felt like I deserved a little bit more of weight and what happened because I was the one like having to recover.
Okay. I understand that.
And like honestly, like the biggest things that we went through, obviously I hear what you're saying about how I could have like given more grace about like how to explaining things. And I think if I'm remembering correctly, which I don't remember it a lot because it feels like a blur, I was annoyed when I had to repeat myself and say it again and again because I'm like, why? I've already said it. Let me just do it type thing. It's just like the things that I would change. They involved you, but they weren't involving you directly. And so, like, the negative things that I think back to were not caused by you, is what I'm saying.
Okay. That I do understand, and I appreciate you saying.
Yeah, I mean, what I would tell you is what I would tell other supporting like people is like, yes, they had the baby and like the having the baby part is over, but they're still going through a lot. And so I would just try to like give them a little bit more consideration than you normally would about like why they're wanting something or why they have wishes about something. It's probably specific. There could be also like trauma or from the birth and like things that they want. And so I would just try to give grace, which I would say to both people. I would say like give the extra ounce of grace, which is hard when you're running on little to no sleep. But I would just say like pause like before you get frustrated about something that they are saying that they want or wishes or boundaries that they have. Pause and stop and like maybe ask them like, hey, why are you thinking that? Or just like try to figure it out for yourself before asking, because I think it's a very vulnerable time. And so it's important to protect their peace because their maternal health, like especially especially initially following the birth, is very, very important and it is at risk.
Okay, that's a very good answer. I think I have a follow-up question. So I think that's very easy to do as the partner when the thing you want is like hard to disagree with. Like if you're like, hey, I need ice cream like now, or like really can't have pizza tonight. I know you ordered it, but like it sounds crazy to me. Can't do it. I understand. Or like we need to cancel plans because I'm not feeling so well physically, didn't expect that. Great. Like all of those things I think are easy to support you in. What if it's something, how do I ask this question? How do I balance the line between trying to give you everything that you want and trying to talk to you about something I may disagree with? So like I may understand your request, but don't agree with just meeting it. You know, because you're saying keep the peace, which I understand is important, but I don't think what you're saying is you want a rollover partner who just does everything at your bidding.
Yeah, I would pause and say like, is this really important? I think if it's something that you can just like let it slide, I would let it slide, like pick your battles. If it's something a little bit more delicate, I know that's harder. I would just ask before you say absolutely not, why would you ever want that or something like that. I would just let them say why. Like ask them, "Hey, why are you thinking this or can you help me understand your wishes?" Because that's showing like that you want to understand, which I think goes a long way. And then you also might learn something that you didn't realize like, "Oh, well that makes a lot of sense or I can see why you'd want that. Maybe we can meet in the middle here," or like just something like that you're willing to work on it and not just be like, "That's preposterous. Why would you ask that?"
Okay. So to the person who's not postpartum, the other partner, you would say give more grace, assume that there's like a reason, a positive reason for the requests, even if they seem ridiculous. Or
It may not be a positive reason, but yes, assume that there's a reason. Or what?
to me, that is positive because you're protecting your own mental health for some reason. So it's different than like, hey, give me a dart because I want to throw it at you, or so, you know what I mean? Like one of those is actually negative. Okay, so I think what you're saying to the partner who's supporting the postpartum person is have more grace, assume that there is a reason behind requests or positions, and do your best to independently pursue that reason if you don't understand it. And if you still don't understand it and you disagree with it and it's something worth discussing, so something you don't want to throw under the rug, have that graceful conversation with your partner to try and understand it from a place of curiosity. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Great. I would say you didn't ask, but you're just making me think of this, to the person who is postpartum. And I think this is part of your advice to your previous self as well, Lauren. Give some more grace to the people who are asking you to understand things, because not every question I was asking you, Lauren, was because I was disagreeing. A lot of them I just didn't understand, even though I was very much willing to meet the requests. Mm-hmm. And I think that you received a lot of my like, hey, I don't understand this as, hey, why would you ask this? That's wrong. No, which is not what I was saying.
I would also try to enter in conversations very gently and really just think about your tone, because you could not be meaning anything by it, but your tone is saying otherwise and you don't mean it. So especially if someone's tired, you may say something really directly and kind of like pushy, and then that makes the other person snap. And so I would just try to like keep it at an even keel. And if you notice that the other person is speaking that way, just be like, hey, can you bring it down, please? And see if you can not, have a fight out of nothing, really.
Are there other pieces of advice you would have?
No, I think that's really it. And I think it's just, you have to unfortunately like learn from it like as you go. Unfortunately, you're probably going to make a mistake, and hopefully you can learn from it and come out of it, and you'll get what we're talking about. It's hard. It's a delicate dance. Everybody's tired. There are changes. It's hard. And just know that it's going to be hard. Maybe if you go in with thinking it'll be hard, it'll actually be easier for you. I don't know.
Maybe. I think that depends on how the person's wired.
Yeah. But I think like we didn't realize how hard it would be and the things that would happen for us.
True. That's probably something everybody would say too.
Yeah, I mean, we did go into it thinking we'd get no sleep, and we were pleasantly surprised by the sleep we got. So I think just maybe think like it's going to be hard, but we can do it. Maybe you have a conversation with it before the baby's born, or a regroup if the baby's already here, and be like, hey, let's acknowledge that it's hard, and we're hopefully both don't tell them, hopefully we're both doing our best. But I'm saying to you, hopefully both of you are doing your best, and just have a discussion and keep the conversations flowing. Don't let resentment build. If you need to say something gently, kindly as you can, and hopefully the communication will help.
Maybe it's, hey, let's do our best and know that we're going to fail a lot, and assume always that the other person is trying their best as well.
It's hard, but yeah, do it. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to this episode with us. We hope that it was helpful and that you feel a little less alone.
Yeah. Thanks for growing with us.
See you next time.
Bye.
Boy, girl, mom, and dad. Gotta wash those butts together. It's a trip, but we'll guide you through with tips and tricks for boys and girls too.